Hello and welcome to the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast.
Hello, Podcast Nation. I want to introduce Ricky Mamoran to the podcast today. He is going to talk to us a little bit about how he got introduced into the outdoors, his life when he was in the military, and stuff like that. So we're just going to talk to him for a little bit and see where it goes. All right, Ricky, it's up to you, man.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, guys, how are you doing? Basically, the way I got introduced into the outdoors, we grew up on a farm. Basically grew our own food, grew our own livestock for quite some time. The adults would go hunting for deer. The first thing that I ever got to go hunting was a rabbit in the backyard with an old box and a string and a stick, setting a trap. And then moved on to squirrels from there. And then actually never hunted any really big game until after the military, when I was trying to find something to kind of like give me something to do, kind of.
Yeah, man, I feel like small game hunting is the perfect way, or, you know, just fishing. Small game hunting and fishing is the perfect way to introduce kids into the outdoors. And my son, you know, he seems to like it at some points, but other times, you know, his iPad's a little bit more important.
If you look at my YouTube channel, it's a family-based bass fishing channel, but it's not meant just for bass fishing. It's meant for taking kids outdoors, getting them away from the Xboxes. And even though the saying's really corny, and it's definitely not my saying, I just like saying it, I try to do less Xboxes and more tackle boxes. But basically, you're 100% right with that. And, you know, for a moment there, I forgot about fishing being in the outdoors. That was actually the main thing my family did. The adults would go, you know, and go deer hunting and whatnot. But we were involved in fishing from the age of probably 2 or 3, honestly. You know, back then they didn't have all the seatbelt laws and the life jacket rules and all these other things that they've got now. So it was an adventure.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You know, I kind of, when I was a kid, you know, kind of the same thing. My dad kind of drug me along into the, you know, fishing or hunting wherever he was going. And one of I wouldn't say it's the best memory, but it's definitely something I'll never forget, happened when I was fishing with my dad when I was like 4 or 5, you know. We were kind of sitting on the bank. He had just bought this new boat. We were kind of sitting there, and he was just testing it out, making sure nothing was leaking, trying to get, you know, the motor hooked up and everything. And I was sitting there playing with this, like, probably an 8-pound anchor. And I was, like, throwing it in the water, you know, pulling it up real fast. You know, I thought I was the coolest, you know, throwing it in the water, pulling it up real fast. And my dad was like, hey, man, you know, one of these times, if you don't watch out, you're going to forget to let go of that anchor, and it's going to yank you off in that water. And I was like, oh, you know, that'll never happen. Next time I did it, man, I guess I just forgot, you know, I just forgot to let go of that rope, and I just went over the boat into the water. Luckily, it wasn't very deep, so, I mean, I just stood up, but, you know, it's definitely something I'll never forget, you know, just being a silly kid playing around.
I hear you. Actually, one of the most fondest things that I can remember involved my dad and my uncle. My uncle's not with me no more, but we were fishing at Lake Okalotney, or Oconee, whichever one's up in Alabama there. And like I said, I do have a brain injury, so like trying to remember names is going to be hard as fire. But anyways, the reason I remember this lake so much is I got my very first fishing rod there. Now my family's big into the brim poles, or as Northerners call them, cane poles. Down here we just call them brim poles. And anyways, there was a Mickey Mouse green and white fishing rod, which is kind of like the Moana fishing poles or the Barbie fishing poles now. Back then, this was the thing. We found it laying against the tree by our campsite, and nobody ever come back to get it. So by the end of the trip, I begged and begged and begged for them to give me that rod, and then they finally just gave it to me because no one ever came to claim it, so at least it would get use out of it. And that was basically my beginning into fishing right there.
That's awesome, man. So it's just kind of just that lucked out that it was by your camp area when you found it and such.
Yeah, it was definitely luck or circumstance or you know, whatever. But when I was a kid, like kids are these days, they're more focused on electronics, you know, moving. Something's got to be moving. Like they can't sit still and just kind of hold on to it. And so back then I had same issues as far as, wanting to always be busy, not be bored kind of thing. And for a while there, fishing was kind of bothersome to me. I really enjoyed saltwater fishing, but didn't like freshwater fishing. And the reason I didn't like freshwater fishing was because I wasn't able to cast a fishing rod as far as my uncle or my dad could do to catch a catfish. There's just a lot of things. We could go into it some other time, but just the advice that you think about that was given to you back then, and now you think about it, you actually use it now.
Yeah, and back then when you were a kid, you were just like, man, this is boring. Yeah, I had the same experience. I think a lot of people do. You kind of get tagged along with your dad or your grandpa or whoever, and you're just like, man, why are we here? Why are we doing this? This is boring. But and then eventually, you get hooked, and that's kind of how it all starts for everybody, I believe.
My love for houseboat food came from those fishing trips, though, because pork and beans, they would call them beans and weenies. You couldn't keep those in the boat because as soon as I found them, I would eat them.
So you said you didn't ever really get into big game hunting until after you were in the military. When did you? How long were you in the military?
Okay, so I was in the Army from '04 to '08. I went to Germany and then went to Iraq from there and did 17 months over in Iraq. And then they retired me in '08 medically.
And when you came back,
I can give you a pretty brief roundup of it. It took 7 hits of shrapnel throughout the whole deployment. There was 13 concussions, and then just normal stuff that happens to guys over there that we don't like to talk about. But basically, that landed me in launch school, and then from launch school, I started working my way through the states to finally end up in Madigan Army Medical Center at the Wounded Warrior Battalion. But as an infantryman, it was just really hard to give that up.
Well, once you got back to the United States and you're kind of in recovery and everything, I'm sure that was a long process. When did you kind of get introduced back into the outdoors?
So to get introduced into the outdoors, the first thing that piqued my interest is I was invited with the DAV on a crossbow hunt in West Virginia. They were going to do deprivation crossbow hunts for does. They said they were just loaded down with does. And I had never touched a bow, and I hadn't touched a rifle since military. And so I was excited but very nervous about it. Well, that's what kind of sparked my interest in it. And I wasn't actually able to go on that hunt. However, it did start an interest as to, hey, maybe I'm pretty good at archery. Maybe I could be good at archery. And so I had a Maverick, I think it was an 800, Mossberg 800 or 500, 12 gauge. And I ended up trading it for a PSE Whitetail Extreme. And I traded it for the release, 3 arrows, the bow, and I think one of the lead counterweights. And this was in 2010 or 9, I'm not sure. It sparked my interest. So I took those 3 arrows, I got in my backyard, I put up some styrofoam, I think, took some spray paint, put like a little crosshairs out there, started throwing arrows down range, learning what to do, what not to do, and then all of a sudden realized I was actually pretty good at this. And so when I could hit the bullseye or water bottles at 65 yards, I was like, well, maybe I need to look into this a little more. I started shooting 3D archery in Indiana for quite a little bit. From there, once I'm in Florida now, man, I moved around the country quite a bit, but my interest just built more and more and more and more. But archery is what drew me into it.
So once you kind of got hooked up with the archery thing, it kind of helped you get hooked back into the outdoors, and you realized you kind of had a knack for it and you liked it. And from there, what was your next big memory of, your process of getting reintroduced into the outdoors?
You're going to laugh about this. Man, the next memory that sticks out like a sore thumb is actually really, really funny. And I think your viewers or your listeners will consider it funny too. So with PTSD, a lot of things, basically give you the fear of God. And, you want to avoid them like the plague. So it's not unsafe for you or unsafe for people around you. And what my dad did, and I still love him to this day for doing this, he said that he was having issues with his 308 and that he wanted me to come down to a place called Gin Lake, which is down here down the house. And, we go out there and shoot now, but back then I wasn't shooting yet. And so he was having issues with his 308. Well, he brought my brother out there. He brought me out there. He brought the 308, a couple of shotguns, and a sidearm. And he's sitting there shooting it, and he's just saying, it's malfunctioning. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I was on edge. I wanted to leave. And I said, just let me see it, and I'll look at it. And come to find out, all it was some sand on the bolt, which he had put on there on purpose. So I cleaned the bolt off. And then once I had the weapon back in my hand, I kind of felt the natural feeling that you get when you're holding the stock and, pushing the bolt forward and hearing the round go into the chamber. And right then it just clicked for me. And then I had another piece of fear kick in, like, I don't know how I'm going to react to this sound going off. And then one way or another, I ended up sending one downrange. I let one go, across the lake there, and it felt amazing. And I didn't hit the target or anything. I just, I was able to overcome that trigger fear, basically. And next thing you know, I'm looking down at scope and I'm trying to, adjust parallax and everything and get on there and just try and get on target. And before you know it, I had shot the 308, and then he said, do you want to shoot the shotgun? And I was like, yeah, why not? And so we ran through like a couple boxes of buckshot, and then we got to the sidearm and basically did the same thing, knocked out like 3 magazines. But basically my dad trying to, we won't say the word trick, but basically he was trying to help me overcome that fear without pushing it on me too hard is kind of how I perceive it. But I thank him so much to this day for that. And, when he hears this, I hope he's listening to that part, because I probably still wouldn't be handling rifles to this day if it wouldn't have happened.
Well, it's really awesome what your dad did there. He kind of like, not like you said, he kind of tricked you into it. He kind of, put the sand in there, kind of caused the issue in order for you to kind of overcome what you were dealing with into, ended up firing rounds down range. And that's awesome. So you sent me some pictures of some turkey that you ended up harvesting.
Yeah. So there's a little town in Alabama, and I call it Guin, Alabama, but I think there's another way to say it. It's Guin. Anyways, I go on hunts there with Wounded Warrior Outdoor Adventures. I absolutely love going on hunts with them. We had 3 turkeys coming in. It was the second to last day of the hunt. And I told my camera guy, because they had camera guys sitting with us, I was like, I hear some coming in. They're coming in. And I had my Jake decoy sitting out in the field. They come in around that hill so fast. And I barely hit that squawk box at all, but they sure brought them in. I've actually got a video where I shot the turkeys. The cameraman was half asleep when I was shooting the turkeys. And so he said, hold on, I got to get camera. And about the time he had the camera finally up out the blind window, I said, all right, I've got sight. I'm taking my shot. And I had pulled the trigger, and he's looking at the turkeys flapping on the ground, turns the camera back over to me, and you just see me there with a 10-mile smile. It was a great feeling.
I bet it was, man. So, you're just kind of there, you hit the call a couple of times, like what time was it an evening or a morning hunt when this happened?
No, this was a morning hunt. Morning hunts, for deer have never panned out for me, but afternoon hunts never pan out for me for turkeys. It's always mornings for turkeys, afternoon for deer, every single time. I don't think it matters what state I'm hunting in either. It always happens.
I also saw a picture, on your Facebook page of a deer that you had harvested.
So I actually just got back from a Wounded Warrior hunt with the same exact people, Wounded Warrior Outdoor Adventures, over in St. Stevens, Alabama, the gentleman's property I was hunting on. he said he had some deer on his hit list that he wanted out of there so they weren't breeding with his does. This year I used my buddy Lance's 270 and I was able to take out that cow horn.
So do you have, for the future, do you have any hunts or anything planned, any big things that you're excited for the 2018 season?
2018, there's been a lot of talk about getting me to go back to Oklahoma, as getting a lot of talk to get me over to Texas. But honestly, if that didn't pan out, I would probably just hunt around the house. I live in a golf course, so it's funny to say hunting around the house, but as long as it's with a bow and arrow, it's perfectly legal. Anyways, you know, I'm always down to go hunting. One of my biggest dreams and aspirations is to do a grand slam in the whole year. I don't know how it's ever going to happen. One day it will, but you know, I'll probably have to wait till some of my kids get older. Pretty much any day of hunting season, that's all I can think about is wanting to go hunting.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us are like that, man. It's just, you know, I don't care where I'm going or what I'm doing as long as I'm out there and, you know, I got something to hunt or, you know, fish. That's the thing, you know, same kind of idea there.
I was just going to say that it takes about between 5 and 6 deer to feed my family, and we only got the one this year, so I've definitely got some makeup work to do.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I had kind of a dry spell this year too, so you know, you're not the only one, man. You know, if you do end up out here in Oklahoma, man, just send me a message depending on where you're at. That's where I live, so depending where you're at, I'd like to meet you and you know, maybe hang out or something.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was hunting with my buddy, I'll just say Jeff, because he told me not to throw his whole name out there, but over in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and had a really amazing time out there. Got to sleep in a tent, eat food right off the fire. I mean, it was an amazing time. Oklahoma is definitely near and dear to my heart now because of that experience. That was the first and only experience I've had in Oklahoma so far. But, you know, with the hunting regulations for Oklahoma and Texas and Missouri, I don't see why I wouldn't be out there as long as I can get logistics squared away.
Yeah, man, for sure. If you end up in this area, just let me know. So do you going to do a lot of fishing this summer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The summertime we do a lot of bass fishing. Occasionally we'll do some brim fishing or, what do they call them up north? Sunfish or panfish. I can't remember which word they use, but, we just call them brim. And then, possibly some more, surf fishing. I get about 2 deep sea fishing trips in a year usually, for people that have, room on the boat and they just, hey, you want to go fishing just to get me out of the house? And I'm like, absolutely, man, let's go.
Yeah, no doubt. That would be cool to go out and deep sea fish. It's something that I'm definitely going to have to do at some point in my life. You know, whenever I get that opportunity, it'll be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun experience. And the thing is, I actually worked as a deckhand on Captain Anderson's fishing tours down here in Panama City. And so it's just second nature to me to be on one of those boats with a rod in my hand, you know, sitting there cranking up 2 chicken hooks at a time.
For sure, man. I feel like that would be a pretty cool experience to be out there and just, you know, like you said, just be a hand on the boat and just experience the ocean and all the different types of fish and everything. Because, you know, me being from Oklahoma, I've never, you know, I went crabbing one time down in Texas, but that's basically the only fishing experience I have in saltwater. And that's not really fishing at the same time, you know.
One way to get into it is just, you know, slowly sneaking into it. That way you don't spend too much money right away.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt, because, you know, the process of getting to saltwater and getting out there, that would be expensive. You know, it would be an ordeal. Do you feel like your kind of transition into the outdoors helped you with your recovery from your injuries, like a therapeutic type thing for you?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So what I've said to the VA and to anyone that's willing to hear my speech is that this is God's therapy. This is what He put this here for. And literally in the Bible it says that, you know, He told Paul, you're supposed to take these creatures. So to me, with the way that the world is and everything these days, you can go to the grocery store, you can get your cow, you can get your chicken, you can get your fish, but you can't get your deer. No matter how far south you go, they don't have deer in the grocery store. Maybe they do in a fancy store. I don't know. They probably call it venison then. But anyways, this is God's therapy. And when you are sitting in a deer blind and you're waiting for the sun to come up so you can start seeing the shadows moving, and you get to see all the sun start coming up, the fog lift up, the blue jays start singing, and all you can do is sit there and pray and say, thank you, God.
Well, man, I'm glad that, you know, the outdoors kind of helped you, you know, into your transition after your injury and everything. I'm glad that you kind of stuck with it, and, you know, it's a great opportunity for you to spend time with your family and meet new people and just enjoy the outdoors, man.
Yeah, 100%. All the people I know, every disabled veteran that I know is because I met them on an outdoor hunt or a fishing trip or a golf outing that I got invited to. You know, we're typically kind of hermits. You know, we don't really reach out to too many people until you find someone that has the same connection that you have, and then you can build a brotherhood off of that, off of the combat experiences and whatnot. So without the outdoors, I think I would probably absolutely stir crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, if you want to, you can go ahead and plug and, you know, thank whoever you want, and I'll leave that at the end of the podcast for you. You know, if you want to thank the Wounded Warrior place that took you down there in Alabama on the hunting trip and stuff like that, or like your friend or your family, or, I mean, your dad for kind of helping you, you know, tricking you back into the saddle with a gun and everything.
Yeah, sure. I would love to take that opportunity. So I just want to say, first and foremost, I have to thank God. I have to thank Him for His guidance and His knowledge, the ability that He gives us to harvest the animals that He put on this earth so we can eat and we can prosper. And so I just had to say thank you. I'd like to thank my dad for not giving up on me after I come back from Iraq and being changed. I know that it's difficult to deal with us guys when we come back, and, you know, we're not the same. And when we left, we were totally normal and whatnot. So thank you, Dad, for not giving up on me and not taking no for an answer, and making sure that I could still maintain maintenance on a firearm and just keeping that in my system, because without it right now, I wouldn't be able to feed my family. Not the way that I want to, not the way that God desired me to do it. I want to thank my wife. You know, she puts up with all my stuff. I mean, stress, overloads. She takes care of the kids while I go on these hunts and these fishing trips. I couldn't do it without her, not one bit. And I want to thank my buddy Lance. Lance has kept me alive. Lance has gave me a reason to keep kicking. And then the last person I want to thank is Daniel Meharry with Wounded Warrior Outdoor Adventures, and Stan and Pastor Kenny and all them that are involved. And just thank y'all so much for taking your time to show some vets a good time and just letting us live our lives like we used to, even if it is only for a week.
Well, man, I think that's gonna be perfect, and I hope you enjoyed kind of speaking with me today, and I had a great time talking with you and kind of hearing your story, and I really appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for your service and everything you did for our country, and I really appreciate everything you did for us, and if there's anything I can do, ever, just let me know, and I'll see what I can do. So,
well, I appreciate it, Rob. What I was going to say is my main mission now with being involved in the outdoor industry is I'm trying to link up with companies that would value the opinion of someone in my position that has to hunt from a wheelchair, that, is basically sitting down the entire hunt, and just offer them the opinion and, write a report or something on their products from a perspective from someone in my position, rather than someone that can stand up in a tree stand and, look down upon the deer and just sit up there, and all that. Because it's a different world when you're on the ground, big time.
Yeah, I can definitely understand what Ricky's talking about when he says it's different hunting from the ground than it is from a stand. With all that being said, I hope you guys had a great time listening to this week's podcast. Ricky's a cool guy. You guys should go check out his YouTube page. Also, if you take a minute out of your day and go and like and subscribe to the Devoted Outdoorsman on Facebook and on YouTube, that would be awesome and it would help me out tremendously. So if you guys don't like the podcast or you're loving it, write a review so I know what's going on. I hope you guys have an awesome week and you enjoy your weekend. Come back here next Saturday for another episode of the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast.